He stepped off the ship in the 1740s, still crusted with Atlantic salt, a Scotch-Irish lad from the misty lowlands of Downpatrick, County Down, a young man who would help carve a home in Virginia's wild frontier. His name was James Newell. This is his story. James was born around 1722 into a world forged by Scottish grit and Irish soil in the misty lowlands of Downpatrick, County Down, Ireland, where the River Coyle wound through fields of flax. His family descended from lowland Scots who had settled in Ulster during the Great Plantation. They were Presbyterians who scratched a living from tenant farms, weaving linen by the hearthlight and tending crops in the perpetual drizzle. All the while, they chafed under the Anglican penal laws that barred them from full civic rights and squeezed their purses with heavy rack rents. The 1730s brought famine's hollow bite and the linen trade's slump. Whispers of distant colonies where land flowed free and faith went unchecked grew louder. By his early 20s, with many kinfolk vanishing westward on famine ships, James heeded the call. He boarded a vessel bound for Virginia, leaving behind the green barrows and sectarian shadows of Ireland for a horizon heavy with reinvention. James stepped off the ship in the 1740s, still crusted with Atlantic salt, a Scotch-Irish lad who would help carve a home on Virginia's wild frontier. James carried two things that defined him: a loyal company ledger in one hand and a long rifle in the other. On the New River, paper and powder were equal coin. He arrived when the mountains were still raw. By 1750, he had married Mary Drake, quiet, steady, the kind of woman who could spin flax and load a musket with the same calm hands. In the early years of their marriage, they began building a life along a sweeping bend of the river where the first lead diggings glimmered in the cliffs and every surveyed acre bore the seal of the Loyal Company. James quickly became known as a reliable trafficking man, punctual, trusted, the hinge between the Williamsburg speculators and the hard men who actually broke the soil. Then came 1755. News of General Braddock's disastrous defeat sent shockwaves down the valley. Shawnee war parties slipped through the mountain gaps. On the 30th of July, Draper's Meadow was attacked and burned. Mary Draper Ingalls was carried off and weeks later made her legendary escape, barefoot and starving, through hundreds of miles of wilderness. Her story drifted around hearths like a solemn warning, including the Newell home. At 33, James stood watch at the stockade protecting Angle's Ferry, rifle loaded, family close inside the rough-hewn walls. He helped raise Fort Chiswell, plank by plank. He answered when the drums beat. Peace returned in 1763 as uneasy as a lame horse. The years that followed brought new counties, new responsibilities. At 53, gray threading through his hair, James Newell, Esquire, took the oath as Justice of the Peace. He sat on the bench in a log courthouse that smelled of pine resin and tobacco juice, settling boundary disputes with the same steady eye he once used to sight down a rifle barrel. When the American Revolution came, James was too old for the line, but not for the war. He signed supply certificates, levied fines on Tories, and kept the home fires banked and the powder dry while his son, James Jr., captained a company at the Guilford Courthouse. James wrote his will in 1804 with a hand that had once steadied a rifle and later a gavel. The estate was modest, land sold, proceeds carefully divided, a horse for one son, a cow for a daughter, a well-worn Bible for another. They buried him where the river sings over lead-colored stones. No marble marks his grave, yet from the stockades and ferries of the New River to the rolling hills of Wythe County, James Newell left behind the steady mark of a man who stood his ground when the frontier called and passed that same resolve on to the generation that followed. His story is one of the untold chapters in my book, Land Where My Fathers Died, Untold Stories of My Father's Patriot Ancestors, of courage, faith, family, and frontier. I'm glad you spent these few minutes with James Newell. If you'd like to hear more stories like his, consider subscribing. Thank you for watching.